Welcome to Passion for Sound, the channel dedicated to thorough and honest reviews of headphones, earphones, DACs, headphone amps, other components and accessories. Basically everything audio related except power amps and passive speakers. My name's Lachlan and my goal is to explore and discuss all kinds of audio topics, even the controversial ones, to help us all find more enjoyment from music. Thanks for watching and enjoy the video. Hey folks, welcome to another Passion for Sound audio review. And today a look at the Shanling UA1. Now before I get into the review, if you've seen the recent HE400i or Shit Jotunheim 2 reviews, you'll know that this exact unit here is up for giveaway along with the more fully featured Shanling UP4. If you're interested in joining that giveaway, the conditions are really simple. All you have to do is be a subscriber and watch this video for a code that's going to come up on screen so that when you see the code on screen, you can write it in the comments down below. I'll be drawing winners for the Shanling UA1 and UP4 based on a random number generator, selecting from those people who've written the codes in the comments below. Now the code in this video is different from the code in the Jotunheim 2 video, so make sure you watch right through to find out what the code is. You can also go back and watch the Jotunheim 2 video if you haven't already to get yourself double the chances. So if you watch the Jotunheim 2 video, watch for the code, comment on that one, watch for the code on this one, and comment on this one. That'll give you 2 chances to win. So good luck in those draws. Thanks for helping us to get to 10,000 subscribers. We're very nearly there and may actually be there by the time this video comes out. So thank you for your support. And now let's get on with the review. The UA1 is a simple inline dongle style DAC. It's got a USB-C connection at one end, a 3.5mm jack at the other, and it only costs $45 US. So that equates to a retail price here in Australia of 75 Australian dollars, making it a pretty affordable device if it does a good job. And I say that because there are other devices on the market like the Tempur-Tech Sonata HD Pro that I've also reviewed here on the channel that provide similar form and function but at a slightly lower price. So one of the big questions for this review is whether the Shanling UA1 is actually worth the extra money. Now unfortunately I'll cover this off now because I know some of you will ask. Unfortunately I don't have the Tempur-Tech Sonata HD Pro here in order to compare them directly, but I'll do my best to explain whether I think this is worth buying over the Sonata HD Pro and also comparing it to another very strong performer in the same sort of category. Very importantly, before I continue, I almost forgot to say a big thank you to Andy from Melbourne Chi-Fi Audio for making this review and the giveaway possible. So with that said, now let's talk more about the UA1. I've already mentioned that it's a USB style device with a 3.5mm connector. It's got an ESS9218P DAC on the inside, and that's going to allow it to decode everything from your standard PCM MP3 files all the way through to high bitrate PCM or DXD, and also DSD up to DSD256. So it's very well featured for the price and for the size. But it is worth noting that in a device of this size and at this price point, it's not the most powerful thing on the market. So it does only put out 80 milliwatts at 32 ohms, meaning it's only very moderately powerful. It's not something I would recommend you look at if you've got difficult to drive headphones, and as you'll hear in a moment, even on regular everyday sort of headphones, it's not going to be the best option for full-size cans in my opinion. It's not bad, and I'll give you some specific examples soon so you can work out if your particular headphones would work with the UA1, but I tend to think of it more as a device for IEM users and select very portable style headphone use. But I'll get to that shortly with some more detail. Before I do, let me talk about some of the compatibility and functionality of the UA1 because there's a few things you should know before you think about buying one. Nothing bad, just good things to know about. And the first thing to know is that when you plug this into your phone, it might appear to come on and then disappear. I actually wrote to Andy from Melbourne Chi-Fi Audio and said, hey, you've sent me a faulty unit, what are we going to do about it? And it was only when I was then fiddling around later on that I discovered that just like the Tempur-Tech Sonata HD Pro, the Shanling UA1 only activates when you plug in the 3.5mm jack. So what was happening was when I plugged the USB-C end into my phone would very briefly recognize there was a DAC connected, but then the UA1 would power off and my phone would lose sight of it. What I then needed to do was plug any of my headphones, earphones, etc., even just an empty cable like a converter cable into the 3.5mm output from the UA1 and it would come alive again. My phone would see it. I could initialize it through USB Audio Player Pro and away I went. So do be aware it may look faulty when you first get it, but it's because you need to plug in the 3.5mm jack. Another important thing to know is that the UA1 requires drivers with Windows. That's becoming unusual these days, and so it caught me a little bit off guard when I thought I had an error when I was using it with the Android and I plugged it into my computer and once again it didn't work there. It just added to my sense that I had a faulty unit here, when in fact it just had a couple little quirks that I didn't know about. So be aware, if you're going to buy this for Windows use, you will need to download a driver. No big deal, it's easy, you install it and it works. If you're going to use it with Android, just know that you need to plug in the 3.5mm jack before it switches on your actual phone. Once all that's out of the way, the UA1 is about as simple as it gets. It plugs in when it's powered on, it just works. As I said before, it takes all the different formats of audio from MP3 through to FLAC, through to DXD, DSD, etc. So once you've got it set up with the right drivers and things plugged in, everything works really nicely. Enjoying this video? If you are and you'd like to help me make more videos like this one, there are lots of ways you can help and most of them don't cost you a cent. You can help for free by liking this video, subscribing and ringing the bell, sharing this video on social media or your favorite audio forums, or by making your next purchases using any of the affiliate links in the description. Obviously that's not technically free, but you're not spending anything extra and it all helps out. Want to go a step further? You could buy some merchandise, t-shirt, hoodies, caps and the like, or you can join the Passion for Sound family on Patreon. It's a growing community with plenty of interesting discussion and your chance to influence what happens on the channel. Check out the description for more information and links where relevant. But for now, let's get back to the video. So let's talk now a bit about the sound. The sound from the UA1 is quite good for this sort of device and at this sort of price point. It's fairly smooth, very easy to listen to. The soundstage is probably a little bit narrow. There's not a huge sense of space, but it's thoroughly enjoyable and perfectly okay. Now you might be thinking that I've just said it's smooth and it has a narrow soundstage, so how can I say it's enjoyable? And the reason is that its redeeming features are it has pretty good sense of detail retrieval and textual information in the music. The treble comes across just ever so slightly dry, and I mean that in comparison to higher level products, but in being a little bit dry, it probably actually helps the UA1 to produce a slightly better sense of texture in the sound. So ultimately, I would describe this as performing about as well as I'd expect for the $45 price tag, maybe a tiny bit better. I think in memory, as I said, I haven't got the Sonata HD Pro here anymore to compare them, but I think from memory, I would lean slightly towards the UA1 because it's a bit more refined in its sound compared to the Sonata HD Pro. That said, there'll be those that prefer the slightly edgier sound of the HD Pro compared to the slightly smoother sound of the UA1, and that's where it's going to come down to preferences. Ultimately for me, how I see the UA1 working best in terms of the expectations people should have for it is working as a better quality USB-C dongle style device for those phones that don't have a headphone output. As you'll hear shortly, I don't think it competes as a really high-end listening device for audiophile use, but it's certainly going to be better than your generic USB dongles that you can buy for a few bucks to give yourself a headphone output on all of the modern smartphones that don't have them. I'll put that into context with a comparison shortly with the EarMen Eagle, but before I do that, I want to circle back to talking about the power output. As I said before, with only 80 milliwatts on tap to 32 ohms, the UA1 is not particularly powerful. To put that further in perspective, I went through a bunch of headphones that I've got here to see just how it fared running from my phone using USB Audio Player Pro and then looking at the volume levels I needed to reach a comfortable listening level, which for me means around 83 to 85 decibels. I started off with the T5s from Beyerdynamic, which are a relatively easy to drive headphone. They're right on that 32 ohm mark, so they should have been right in the sweet spot for the UA1, but I still found myself using about 80% of the available volume to get a good listening level out of them. And that's why I say I don't see the UA1 as particularly good for driving full-sized headphones and therefore much better for IEMs. But to continue a couple of specific examples, I also tried the DT880 250 ohm and the HE400i 2020 version that I've just recently reviewed here. In both cases, I was really pushing the UA1 to try to get the listening levels I needed. With the DT880, I literally had it maxed out and was only just reaching the listening levels I was looking for, and with the HE400, I was just a little bit before maxed max volume, so sitting at around that 90 to 95% mark. So hopefully that demonstrates to you that the UA1 is not going to be a strong performer with full-sized headphones designed more for desktop listening situations. The good news is it works beautifully with headphones designed for more portable use, like say the Meza Audio 99 Neo. I tried that and it was comfortably humming along in the 60 to 70% range. So that's about where I want to see a product working, because you've got plenty of headroom for big dynamic swings, any EQ that you might want to add to it, all of the extra power that you need to make sure you've always got enough on tap, but also giving you enough volume range to work with. So really the UA1 should be thought of, as I said before, as an IEM or portable headphone solution. Don't think of it as driving a full-sized headphone in the same way that some higher-end dongle DACs might, or indeed a desktop solution will. By this point in my testing, I'd kind of decided that I thought the UA1 was a good, solid device doing what I expected at its price point and with its feature set. But I was curious to see just where it compared to spending a bit more money, in this case about double the money, to get something that's really at a more high-end level, and in this case I was looking at the EarMen Eagle. So the EarMen Eagle costs $119, making it still pretty affordable in this space, but obviously it's $74 more than the UA1, and that means, I said before, nearly double the price. It's actually closer to nearly triple the price, and so there should be a big difference between the two of them. The EarMen uses a higher-end DAC from Sabre, so whilst they're both based on a Sabre DAC, they're at different levels in the hierarchy, and therefore you'd expect, given the price and the hardware on board, that the Eagle should comfortably outperform the UA1. And I have to say that it definitely did outperform it. The Eagle came across as more refined, there was a greater sense of space between all the sounds, everything was more detailed but still very smooth and very comfortable and good to listen to. So ultimately you can think of the Eagle as a logical step up along the same continuum as the UA1, but it's clearly better than the UA1 without any doubt in my mind. Listening to them side by side showed the UA1 to sound a little bit thicker and with a little bit less space around the sound, but you could definitely hear that they come from the same overall family of sound. That's not to say they've got a Sabre sound, because I don't believe there's such a thing anymore. Maybe there was in the early days, but I've heard lots of different implementations of Sabre chips lately, and there's been quite a wide variation in the output. So I'm not saying that these are the same because they're Sabre. What I'm saying is they've got similar, pretty well refined, pretty smooth presentations, and it's just that in the case of the Eagle, it goes further in terms of detail retrieval, textural information, and the sense of space provided around each individual sound, but also in the soundstage overall. Now at this point you might be thinking, well, what's the point in buying a UA1 when I could spend less and get a Sonata HD Pro, or spend that extra going up to something like the EarMen Eagle and get significantly better sound? In my opinion, where the UA1 works is if you're someone that's looking for a smoother sound than the Sonata HD Pro, and if you're only looking to drive IEMs and headphones. One of the things that's always worth keeping in mind in this hobby is that your sound experience is going to be limited by the weakest performing part of your sound chain. So for example, if you're using a pair of headphones or earphones that are relatively budget, there's no point spending a fortune on an Eagle or a Sparrow or a Dragonfly, any of those higher end DACs, because you're most likely not going to get the most out of it. That said, you may want something a bit more refined than the Sonata HD Pro, and that's where I think the UA1 comes in. Again, I'm not saying the UA1's better than the HD Pro, I'm saying they've got different sounds. The HD Pro is quite dry and a little bit edgy from memory, whereas I find the UA1 smoother. So that's where I'd say, what's your earphone? Is your earphone a bit drier, a bit more analytical to start with? The UA1's probably better. If you've got a more warm, lush sounding headphone or earphone, then you probably want to go for the Sonata HD Pro. I think from memory the HD Pro might have a bit more power, so that could be another factor in your decision, but my key point is I would look at the UA1 and the HD Pro side by side as both very good options depending on what you need. So I guess to summarize this, what I'd say is if you're in the market for a USB dongle style DAC and you're looking in that budget entry level type tier, I think the UA1 should be on your list. It's nicely designed, it's well put together, it works well once you know that you've got to plug in a 3.5mm jack and or download the drivers, but it just does everything well. Now another comparison people are going to ask me for is the iBasso DC01, 02, 03 or 04. I've reviewed the 01 and the 02 on the channel and I was pretty unimpressed. The 03 and the 04 I haven't heard yet, And from memory, what I can say is I think the UA1 is better than the DC-01 and the DC-02. I think it's got better detail retrieval, particularly compared to the 02, which is the comparative single-ended version. I would choose the UA1 based on that because I was thoroughly disappointed with the DC-02. In the case of the DC-03 and DC-04, I haven't heard those yet, so I'm going to withhold judgment and just say that I think the UA1 should be in your shortlist if you're shopping in that rough budget range for this type of product. But I do think there's other products on the market that you should also consider because the UA1 doesn't win everything hands down. It's just a solid option within that market tier. So hopefully this has been of some help to you, giving you some insight into the UA1 and whether it might fit into the shortlist for your next purchase. If it has, please think about subscribing, hitting the like button. Make sure to write that code in the comments below if you want to win the UA1 and get it for free. But for now, I'll leave you to the music, so happy listening, and I'll see you here next time on Passion for Sound.